Hey, welcome to SpartanMag Live. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Welcome in, post-game call-in show, call-in, vent. Let us know what you're thinking. I know you're hurt. I know Michigan State fans are hurting today. Tough day today. It's been a tough season, except for that victory in Ann Arbor. Michigan State 1-3. Very strange first half of the season. Strange to say first half of the season when we're, 2 weeks into November. But Michigan State, you saw it. Problems at the quarterback position. Problems in pass defense in the first half. Run defense was pretty good against an Indiana team that doesn't run it all that well, although Stevie Scott put up all kinds of numbers as a freshman and pretty good as a sophomore. This year, Indiana's run offense has just been kind of mediocre. The rest of that Indiana outfit, pretty darn good, including Penix throwing the ball, 3 excellent wide receivers, and a handful to cover. And you certainly cannot give them a short field with turnovers. And all 3 losses for Michigan State, turnovers a big problem. All 3 losses. How do you stay out of those situations? Well, it's a mixture of things. You have Anthony Williams getting 1 carry, fumbling at Michigan State's 15-yard line. A couple plays later, touchdown, 14-0. Defense playing well. They see that happen. It's hard to keep them out of the end zone from 14 yards out. Interception. First one for Rocky Lombardi was an interesting one. Saw press coverage, single safety deep, press coverage. Should be safe to throw that deep fade on that one. And put a lot of air under it. I'd have to look at that one again because I'm not exactly sure
Call from
how that happened.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, there we have Old Tuck on the line from Austin, Texas. Old Tuck, I'll ask you to hold on for a second. I'm going to set the table a little bit, just some opening thoughts. But on that first interception for Rocky Lombardi, press coverage, you should be safe throwing it to the sideline on that. Maybe he left a little bit to the inside. He was throwing to Jaden Reed. The corner covering Jaden Reed did not make the interception on that. It was the other corner. Michigan State had 2 receivers over here. They run a switch release. And I don't know if the inside receiver was Reed, he becomes the outside, and the outside becomes the inside. I don't know if the outside was supposed to clear further and take his man away from it, but it's really strange to have 2 corners over there and a corner get an interception that was not the corner that was covering on that play. Seemed safe to throw it up there like that. And then when the ball was in the air, the corner that was covering Jaden Reed saw that it was in the air and just kind of did a box out of Reed, like a basketball box out to shield him out so his teammate could find the ball and get an interception on that one. I don't think I've ever seen an interception quite like that. A lot of times you'll see an interception and you know what happens, and the quarterback knows right away, and the coaches know right away. I'll have to ask around a little bit to know what was supposed to happen on that one. Now, the second interception was just a bad read, and I think Michigan State was already down 14-0 at that point. They were down 14-0. It's cover 2. And he tried to fit it into an area where there was no window. And it was after that when the Rocky Lombardi was pulled and he didn't play again the rest of the game. Peyton Thorne came in, did some good things. Call up, let us know, or post over there in the live area, in the chat area. Let us know what you think about Peyton Thorne. I'll ask today, give me 3 goods and 3 bads from today. One of the goods, I think the Block S helmet looks pretty good. Not something I want to see every week, but I thought it looked good. A darker, deeper form of the current Michigan State color green. Not the old Kelly green that Michigan State used to have in the 80s and 90s, which wasn't bad. I like the new green better. The helmet looked good. The defensive interior, as a salute to George Perlis, looked good. Not much else did. Let's see what Old Tuck has to say. Old Tuck, how you doing, my man? You still there?
How you doing? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead. You're on the air. Atlanta, hold on.
I've got a bunch of old...
What's that?
I got a bunch of old Spartans in town here, Comp. I got a bunch of old Spartans that lived on Spartan Street, Albert Street, 518 Gunson.
Yeah.
We're down in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
As you know, we got pork belly burn-ins.
Party in Gunson tonight. Party at Gunson tonight. Wear a mask, though.
Used to be, but I'm sure there will be. Wear a mask. But we're in Austin. We've gone through vast quantities of bourbon.
Good.
Among other things. And, I think that a couple questions I had for you. First one was, over the last couple of weeks, is the defense maybe better than what it's looked like, given all the turnovers and short fields. And then the second one is, I hate to hear Mel in the post game start to talk about what the guys we have and, getting, starting to kind of talk about, what we have to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, when you take a head coaching job, especially, he's making a good amount of money doing it, you're paid to come in and work with the guys that you have. And that's just the world we live in. So I hope he doesn't continue down that road. I did like you said, the defensive line. I thought they were active against a good running back. I think we did pretty well against the run this week. And outside of that, man, there's maybe a few plays in the secondary that were made. But, I just wanted to get your thoughts on those couple things. And
right,
we're going to get back to the bourbon.
Yeah, hold on a second. Keep that bourbon at the ready. Hold on. You're asking if the defense is possibly better than it's shown on the scoreboard, having to deal with the short field. I think there's a possibility of that. They certainly, last week against Iowa, it's 35-0 at halftime. The defense had given up 21. I mean, they got, Iowa sawed through them pretty effectively the first two drives. You throw in that punt return for a touchdown and the pick six, it's 35, and then the whole game changes. The defense was poor to begin with, and I don't think the intensity was good last week. I thought the intensity was better this week. I thought the defense started out pretty well. Got that interception from Shaq Brown on the first drive. Second drive ended with a punt for Indiana. 3rd and 1, Naquan Jones, who did not get the start today. I didn't think Naquan Jones played well against Iowa. I thought that he was getting moved by double-team blocks, and I mentioned that in the pre-snap read, and I think I mentioned it this week in various articles and on the podcasts. And Jalen Hunt got the start today. Redshirt freshman defensive tackle started in front of Naquan Jones. So guess what happens? Naquan Jones loses his starting job, goes out there for the second series, and looked like a different player. Looked excellent. Naquan Jones had a nice play on 3rd and 1 at the 36-yard line, got double-teamed, beat the double team, got off the block, made the tackle on 3rd and 1 stoppage, and they had to punt. So Indiana had, interception on the first drive, punted on the second drive. After Naquan Jones made that stop, Michigan State's driving. And actually the very next play, right after Naquan Jones made that stop, punt, and that's when Rocky Lombardi threw the interception. Among other things, when Michigan State turned it over, it was early in the drive. The Michigan State turned it over, as you know, 3 times on the first 5 possessions. 3 of the first 5 possessions. Those turnovers came on the first play, and the second play. So not only are you turning it over in your own territory, you're setting your defense back there on the field. But to answer your question, I thought the defense finished the game well, and the first 2 drives began the game well. Pass defense was not good. Indiana started hitting some soft corners. I thought Michigan State was soft along the sidelines. I asked Mel Tucker after the game what he thought of the pass defense, and he thought it was too soft at times, run after the catch, too much of that at times. I thought Michigan State, with some of their cover 3, was leaving it soft on the sidelines because they were replacing a lot of defensive backs. I think that might have had something to do with it. But overall, pass defense was soft in the middle portions of the game. Indiana got a comfortable lead, didn't try to add to it, tried to establish the run game, for the future. Indiana, played the fourth quarter, I thought, to try to build for their team for the future to get the run game improved. And they were not able to do that against Michigan State late in the game. But if Michigan State had had a pulse on offense, then Indiana would have kept the foot on the gas offensively, and we would have maybe gotten a better read on Michigan State's defense, and it might not have been a good thing. The pass game probably was going to be there all day for Indiana as much as they wanted it. You also asked about, you hated to hear Mel Tucker talk about, about the players he's left with and things like that. A lot of times coaches will say that from the beginning. I mentioned that on one of the podcasts a couple of weeks ago. I remember when John Cooper was the new head coach at Ohio State, replacing Earl Bruce, like 1988, and at the Big Ten preseason media days in Chicago, from the jump, John Cooper going into year 1 said, I believe we've had a real downturn in physicality here at Ohio State, a real downturn in team strength. We don't have enough strong players. We only have X number of players that are benching 400 pounds. I mean, before he coached a game, he had the fans and media understanding it was going to take a long time because they didn't have enough strong players. Now, that's dumping on his predecessor a little bit, but that's kind of the way the game is played. I don't think Mel Tucker wanted to do that with Mark D'Antonio. Plus, Mel Tucker's big on no excuses, no explanations, so he didn't want to come in right away and talk about the cupboard not really being stocked all that well. Thirdly, he's a competitor, he's a coach. He thought maybe they had a chance to win more this year. So in order to win more, you need everybody to believe in themselves, get their confidence, pump them up. So he didn't want his own players to lack confidence. So he wanted them to lack confidence. I mean, he wanted them to be pumped up. And I don't think he was looking to scapegoat anywhere. But now that they're 1-3, they lose these games 49-7, 24-0 back-to-back. It kind of begs for a little bit of some explanation. And I think that's where he's headed with some of that. Bottom line, I think he's telling the truth, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm losing you a little bit.
Started to kind of.
All right, Old Tuck. I'm losing
Take
you.
my call.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. All right, give us a call. Jump back in. We had a call from Atlanta early. Go ahead and give us a call. I meant to put this up there, too. There you go, Old Tuck. I want to put your name out there. Let me get rid of this thing also. All right, so, Peyton Thorne today, 10 out of 20 for 120 yards. Cartero 917 says that Peyton Thorne needs to start and Day needs to be the backup from here on out. There's a lot of agreement about that. A lot of people see it that way on the Underground Bunker message board over at SpartanMag.com. I've seen some of the comments here during the post game. A lot of people saying that there is no quarterback controversy because my initial post game article talked about the blowout yields a quarterback controversy. And the response is, there's no controversy. It's Peyton Thorne, period. And I can't disagree with that. And I think Mel Tucker, with some of his comments, is kind of leaning toward that. I think they'll look at the film, but I think they know going into this that Peyton Thorne's going to grade out a lot better than Lombardi did today. And when practice begins in earnest Tuesday, pretty much, I think it's the way they run it, Sunday, then Tuesday, they won't tell us, but I wouldn't be surprised if Peyton Thorne is getting first-string reps next week in practice. Now, Lombardi has won the job through practice, September, October, however long they practiced before the season started, because of what he's done in practice. Just a little, from what I heard, he made fewer mistakes. And Tucker liked the leadership that Lombardi was showing, because Lombardi's got a good personality for that. And he looked okay in the Rutgers game despite all those turnovers, those fumbles. He didn't have much to do with any of them except for maybe the one sack inside the 5. Then he played really well against Michigan. And my thought was they can win with him. I thought that he was good enough. Hey, 404, call back. I missed you on that one. I'm going to turn the thing on so I can hear it now, because sometimes I miss it. Lombardi, I wasn't sure coming into the year whether he had it.
Call from
Brad from Austin, Texas.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, Brad, hold on a second, please. I thought Lombardi had the goods to be a quarterback that you can win with in the Big Ten. I didn't think that coming into the season. I was open-minded about it, but I didn't expect that to be the case. I thought he was okay in Rutgers, and he really impressed me against Michigan, and I was like, dude, he can do it. He's got it. He's ready to go now. And the Iowa game was a nightmare for various reasons. He was going back home. They got behind by a big number, and he forced a few things, which I've said before. Kirk Cousins was known to force things also when the game started to get away. But Rocky Lombardi could not afford to come in and have that performance against Indiana. Now, I will say Indiana's got a good pass defense. They're getting interceptions on everybody this year. They're getting like 3 interceptions every week. They're doing some sophisticated things in the backfield. They do a good job disguising it. That's a good defense. And they get where they need to go, and they get there quickly. They do some hitting, too. It's a good Indiana team, ranked number 10 in the country. I'm not sure they're a top 10 team, but they're a top 15 or 20 team. They've got Ohio State next. We'll see what they've got. But Lombardi today against that defense, the first one, like I said, that first deep interception, I'm not sure what to make of that one. But the second one was dreadful, and they needed to make a change at that point. Secondly, on Michigan State's opening drive, that 3rd and short, they ran a zone read for Lombardi on 3rd and 2. I don't hate the concept. Lombardi's got some athleticism, putting the ball in his hands to make a read on an unblocked defender. making a decide play, whether to leave it with the running back or keep it. It looked like he had trouble deciding on that and ended up fumbling. I don't know if he left it in the gut in the running back and the running back didn't feel it firm enough, or if he was trying to pull it out and it got away from him. I'm not sure, but that was Michigan State's first drive. They drove to the 38-yard line. Looked like a good start for Michigan State. Turns out that was the deepest penetration of the day for Michigan State, the 38-yard line. They got back to the 38 later with Peyton Thorne. 4th and 2, ran it with Connor Hayward, didn't convert it. 38-yard line is as deep as they got. Opening drive, 38-yard line, zone read, 3rd and 2, fumble, and that drive failed. So that's Lombardi coming out of that. Then the interception into the cover 2. Had to make the move, and you can't make that read on that cover 2. You can't. You got to be further along than that. Even with the score, what was it? It was 14-0 at that point. You know, you just can't have that, especially if there's not great separation between you and Peyton Thorne. You can't have that happen. So let's go out to Brad in Austin, Texas. Thanks for waiting, Brad. Where do you hurt? What's going on? Where does it hurt? How bad does it hurt?
No, it's good. I think trying to look at the positives, looking for player development, just curious to see, you know, who you thought from a positive or development standpoint showed out today. I was impressed with some of the younger defensive tackles. You know, Hunt, I think, is going to be a plus player for us. I like Fletcher.
Yeah.
I like the way that he was holding his own on the edge against the run. So a couple positives there. You know, the wide receivers are going to be good. The one area that I've just got a lot of concern with, and would like your take on this, is I'm not seeing much out of the offensive line in terms of, you know, push, and we have got to be able to create a run game, and that to me is where I'm not seeing any positives. So just would like your take on that.
Yeah, just all right, Brad, appreciate that. Let's see. Sheboygan, call back in a moment. You still with me, Brad?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you know, I like your style, looking for positives, and that's what Mel Tucker's looking for too. And I thought it was interesting the way Mel Tucker said after the game. He said, "Hey, we need to play football," and it's not like he says we need to get wins. He needs to get these guys on the field so they can make mistakes and learn. They can make corrections. They can figure out who they have, who they can depend on. Now, some people might say, well, why do you have to make mistakes in a game? Well, it'd be, hey, Brad, I'm going to move on, all right? Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Sheboygan,
Call
hold.
from
George.
to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Hey, George, hold on a second there. We're still finishing.
Yeah, no worries.
We're finishing a thought here. If you could turn down your radio or your computer, that'd be great. Also, George, up in Sheboygan.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, so Tucker, you know, saying that he said we need to play football. He needs to get the guys on the field, make corrections, and iron out some of these things and find out what needs to happen to put Rocky Lombardi out there, see if he can hang. And if he can't, make some decisions and go. Put Anthony Williams out there, see if he can hang. And if he can't, make decisions and go. Now, it's expensive to do that when you're losing football games, and nobody likes that. And it's not good getting blown out 2 straight weeks in the Big Ten. Because in today's age of offensive football, you don't see many blowouts these days. You see a few, but not like it was in the 70s and 80s. But 49-7, 24-0 back-to-back, really ugly. And that could have been a lot worse than 24-0. Indiana took it easy on Michigan State in the last few minutes. Now, the previous caller, Brad in Austin, was asking about Fletcher and Jalen Hunt. I agree, defensive line, young players looking good. Mallory, I saw Mallory for the second straight week making a good play. The defensive interior for Michigan State was good. Indiana got very little running up the middle all day. They got a little bit when they ran some outside zones here and there, but even not much there either. I didn't get a good look at Michael Fletcher today, the redshirt freshman out of Flint. I know last week against Iowa he did some good things. He's a lean guy, kind of a thinner guy that's going to fill out. Even though he's thin and lean, last week I saw him take on the point of attack against a good tight end and be firm against it and set a wall and send things back inside. Prior to that, he had a sack against Rutgers, I think it was. He's got some good straight line speed, has some strength, has some athleticism. I've said since he was a recruit that he's not a guy that's going to be like a natural pass rusher that has the ability to really turn the corner, bend, and run the hoop, as they say, as a pass rusher. I don't think that he's got that natural flexibility. If he did, then he would have been a a huge time recruit, right? He was a big time recruit. I think he might have been, well, he was 3-star in Rivals.com, and I think that was right. But I like the way his career has gotten off to a good start with some of that physical strength. Plays hard. He's going to be a defensive end of the future. Jalen Hunt was good, got a start today. Mallory was solid. Slade was good. And I saw Piotrowski, the true freshman from Ohio, came in, and he took on a double team. He was only in there for a couple of plays. He took on a double team once, beat it, and made an initial hit on a play, and then he came right back out. I was like, oh, man. I mean, that was like a physical play for a teenager true freshman to go out there and do that. So inside interior defense was good if you're looking for positives. I appreciate Brad looking for those positives. All right, we got, I think, George and Sheboygan. How you doing, George?
Yeah, actually, I'm calling out of San Diego by proxy of Sheboygan.
All right.
No, today just seemed like more of the same. Today just seemed like, Michigan State's, that's my tried and true, and it didn't seem like they came to play. They in the first half they just showed that they don't have an offense that can compete in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is, it's a punch you in the face, it's a punch you in the mouth kind of league. And in the second half, they showed that they can actually play defense. They can do that. They can make the adjustments on the fly. But in the first half, Rocky Lombardi is not the answer. It's tough because Lombardi does have starts. He does have experience. He's got the arm. He's got everything that you want in a quarterback, except for he can't make the reads on the fly. And today we saw some really good positives out of the young man they put in the second half, but I just don't know I don't know. What do you think for Michigan State moving forward and an offensive mind frame?
Yeah, I tell you what, George. Right away, the quarterback thing. If Rocky Lombardi was the starter over Thorne, that Thorne has a ways to go too. And Thorne did some good things, but there were some third down reads where he was a little jittery, understandable, making pretty much his debut. He got 4 snaps against Iowa, 1 throw, but and I asked Peyton Thorne after the game if there were any plays he would like to get back. Of course, he said the interception. That was to Gillison. Gillison was open. He just sailed it high for an interception on that one. There were some other ones, 3rd down and 4th down plays that were difficult. Indiana's a difficult team to make reads and throws against, but there was one play when I thought that his guy, Jaden Reed, was coming open over the middle and he didn't see him, which I thought was a little bit of a surprise because Jaden Reed is this guy that he played high school with. I think that'll blossom as they go. And there's a couple times where they had broken plays where Thorne's elusiveness, getting out of the pocket, elongating a play, getting into a scramble rule situation, hit Reed deep down the field once. That was excellent. Those guys showing some chemistry. That's good. You don't want to judge Thorne too much on some of the negatives, and they were small negatives. Expecting him to, I think you judge quarterbacks on 3rd down. 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 against different coverages. Read quick. Can you get rid of it accurately and so forth? And that was just school was in session for him a little bit against that Indiana defense. But my point is, if he was not able to beat out Rocky Lombardi, and you see what Lombardi is, then Peyton Thorne has a ways to go, understandably. Secondly, he has a ways to go without a run game. Any quarterback who has a ways to go without a run game. Gillison is starting to come around as a tight end. I think he's starting to play better. I thought he was a question mark coming into the year, and I wasn't sure where he was going to be. Dotson gets hurt. He's not been available. Gillison has done okay. Tyler Hunt had a nice play on a square in when it was like 2nd and 21, gained 15 yards on that. That was okay. But, Burgors comes in as a scholarship tight end. Good all-around athlete, but they've not used him much. And today they threw a little out route to him, and the ball went through his fingertips for an incompletion. Your tight end's got to catch that. And I've been wondering why Burgors has not been in the playing group. Big, strong guy. They expect him to be a physical type of guy. But maybe we saw a reason why he's not playing. Maybe his hands are not reliable. So my point is, you have a quarterback situation with not much of a run game, and the tight end situation is not great, and this offense wants to be predicated around the tight end. They don't have a deep cast of difference makers at tight end right now. So Thorne Thorne showed some good things, and he's got 4 more years of eligibility after this year because this year doesn't count if he wants to be around. Michigan State's going to continue to try to recruit over people's heads. That's what they say. They want to recruit well and then go out and recruit better. And they're not making any apologies about that. But, getting back to what Brad said earlier, he was talking about the offensive line, and you're talking about the offense, and it's one and the same. If you don't have a run game and the offensive line's not coming around, that's a problem. Last week against Iowa, Michigan State averaged 3.0 yards per carry on tailback runs, which is not terrible against that defense. There's little glimmers of hope here and there. I've not broken down what went right or wrong in the run game today, but 3 games this year, they've played 4. 3 times Michigan State's been held to 60 yards rushing or less. And you're not going to survive in the Big Ten if you can only run 60 yards on a Saturday.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. But, what it boils down to, and I guess the end state is what do you see or foresee? Michigan State did show glimmers of hope and on their offense, but moving forward, what do you see Michigan State's path? Do you see it as a Lombardi path? Do you see it as a Mel Tucker waiting for 4 years and he gets his recruits, the people that he puts in there? Or do you see it as he's going to utilize what he has currently and try to do the best with what he has?
It's got to be a combination. He's going to try to do the best he can with what he has currently, and he doesn't make any apologies about that. And that's page 1 of the new coach handbook. When you come in, you prop up your players and you say, you guys are not who I inherited. You are my players. If you're on the field, you're a starter. We believe in you. So that's what he's saying. Whether he really believes it or not, he's trying to get the best out of those guys. So he's got to do what he can with that. Today, like Brad said, or I think it might have been Old Tuck said, it's the first time in a post-game press conference that he kind of alluded that, we got to find out who we have with what we have. Kind of alluding to, the cupboard is not greatly stocked in all areas. So it's a combination. He has to do what he can with what he has in the meantime while he builds it back up. So I don't think, after today, it's got to be, you got to think, unless something changes drastically, Peyton Thorne is going to have that inside track this week, I would think, in practice. We'll see what he can do in the next couple of games. If they play next week, Maryland's out this week, so you have to hope that Maryland comes back and can play next week. Maryland's on a 2-game win streak. Would have liked to have seen Maryland play against Ohio State this week. Just for personal reasons, I would have liked to have seen Maryland play to see if they could continue to do well on offense against that Ohio State defense, firstly. Secondly, I wanted to see more of what they have with their team for my pre-snap read next week to get more of a read on Maryland for our pre-game articles next week. But that's just selfishly talking. But so I'm thinking Peyton Thorne's got the inside track until and unless he goes out and proves that he needs a lot more seasoning, which is possible. But I think with most young quarterbacks, you can expect a learning curve, and every time he goes out to be a little bit better. I thought that might be the case with Lombardi, but he might have peaked in week 2, and it's been tougher since then. In the meantime, you're asking about the program and where it's going. Michigan State's going to continue to recruit quarterbacks and create a quarterback competition. Hampton Fay is a good quarterback out of Arlington, Texas, that they've got committed right now. He's a 3-star recruit, but I think he has 4-star talent. I think he's excellent. And I've not watched his games lately, but I kind of thought there's a chance he could have like a 4-star type season, and Michigan State would have to continue to do some recruiting to keep him, because that's just the nature of recruiting these days. But no, I don't think that they're like latching on to Lombardi saying that he's our guy going forward. I think it's an open competition all the time. He's said that. I think he would have loved to have seen Lombardi to progress, because I think he liked Lombardi's leadership, and I think Tucker thought that Lombardi demonstrated a level of coolness in the first 2 weeks that Tucker thought was good, and they thought they could work with that, but you can't be making reads like that.
Well, all right, my man. Well, next time the old green and white comes out to San Diego for the Holiday Bowl, you got a place to stay, my dude.
All right. When we were out there a couple of years ago, had a pretty good time. What do they call that? The Gaslight District? Is that what that's called?
The Gas Lamp District, my man.
Yeah, went there.
We thumped Washington State, and it didn't. It's I feel like the results of that ended up really badly for Washington State, and that was a bad gig. But rest in peace to the quarterback for Washington State. But you know what, green and white, we're everywhere. We're out here in San Diego. We always support our team. We've got our own little place in Pacific Beach. So whenever you make your way out here to California, you always got a place to stay, my man.
Thanks. I appreciate that, George. And you remind me, if Michigan State gets back out to San Diego, are you a subscriber at SpartanMag.com?
Yes, my dude.
All right. So on the message board there, you let me know there. And thanks for subscribing to SpartanMag.com. Thanks a lot, George.
All right. Cheers, brother.
There he goes. There goes George. SpartanMag.com. It is the Michigan State site covering Michigan State sports for the Rivals.com network. The Underground Bunker message board is where a lot of these rascals get together and talk about Michigan State sports. The Underground Bunker message board is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. The Daily Narrative. Underground Bunker. SpartanMag.com. If you're not a subscriber, go over there, check it out, and become a subscriber. There's information at the bottom of the screen right now. And you can get a 30-day free trial over there. Click on the red thing at the top. Have a lot of fun. Noah Conley posts over here. He says, move this out of the way a little bit. I can't see it. He says, well, that game was rough. How come Michigan State is not playing Devontae Dobbs? I think he's better than most of the offensive linemen. Well, I'll tell you what, Noah. Dobbs started last year against Rutgers, and it did not go well. And new staff came in, and I heard during preseason camp not to expect too much from Dobbs. I didn't know what that meant. And then we've not seen him in uniform. Did not dress for the game today. I've not seen him on the field. I've not heard anything about him, really. He was a 4-star recruit coming in from the Detroit area. And I've kind of heard some indications that he's not sure how much he loves football. So when things like that are going on, it's sometimes a little bit of a red flag. But you say that you think he's better than the offensive lineman. I don't think that's the case. As rough as the offensive line is played, I don't think Dobbs is the answer right now. But I was watching pregame warm-ups, and they had walk-ons in there. Van Opstal from West Michigan's out there, second-string left tackle. Ohanba came in and played some right guard today, which is interesting because for 2 or 3 years, he was not heard from at all, and the coaches never mentioned him in press conferences. New coaching staff comes in, new beginning for him, makes the travel team. He's on field goal protection, and then boom, he's on the field. Played a little bit, was it the Michigan game, and then today played a handful of plays. I've not gone back to watch this game yet to see what Ohanba looked like, but he's on the field. That's interesting. Meanwhile, Dobbs didn't dress, Mustafa Khalifa didn't dress, and Damon Kaler, offensive lineman from Indiana, did not dress. I've not seen any of those players all year. Kaler, he committed to Michigan State, came to Michigan State's camp, and in my humble opinion, didn't look that great at Michigan State's camp. And he was a commitment at the time. And I don't think he's quite gotten into the 2 deep since. I don't know if he's gotten into the 3 deep. So Michigan State's there's gonna be some attrition. And they're gonna need attrition because they need recruiting classes to number in the 25s. They need a 25-man recruiting class every year for the next couple of years. And that means it's a tough thing to say, but that means not holding on to players. If you're not in the 2 deep by your 3rd year, sometimes you have to make a move, not only for your program, but for a young man's best interest in his future. If he wants a chance to play somewhere, sometimes it's somewhere else. Give us a call. We've got another few minutes. As long as we're taking calls, we will stay on this. I've got to touch base with my guy, Paul Konerdijk. We still have to record the post-game VCast. Unable to do it in the stadium because I'm not in the stadium right now. I've been having a mask on right now. This picture I took, it's a green screen. I took this picture before kickoff. You can see post-game or pre-game warm-ups going on in the background. We can't do the VCast in the stadium like we normally do because we would have our masks on, and I don't think they would tell us to stop doing it, but I don't think they want any more of my hot air in the press box than there already is. So Konerdijk's going to be home. We'll do it from remote locations. He's on his way back to his home right now. I got to catch up with him. We'll do the VCast. You'll find that over at SpartanMag.com. Doors fan says no Amy today. No, I talked to Amy. Amy's got some personal business to take care of, and maybe we'll hear from him later in the week. Let me check some of these questions. Let me go up to the top here. We got Ty Garland. I meant to text you, Ty, because you and I, we played a little text tag earlier this week. I meant to tell you that we were okay this week with Ron Armstrong doing the skull session with us. Sometimes Ron's not available. And when that happens, Ty, I want to come to you and you can tell me what's going on, because I really wanted to find out what you had to think, Ty Garland, former inside linebacker at Michigan State back in the early 90s in the Perlis era. I'm sure Ty was appreciating those helmets today. But Ty Garland has played in a two-gapping scheme at a linebacker position, and he would know the difficulty for an inside linebacker to make reads behind a two-gapping defensive line. It's a read, it's a knack thing, from what I understand. You have to be more instinctive, and Noah Harvey is still in the learning stages in that. I didn't see Noah Harvey today. I didn't see any gap mistakes. Michigan State looked pretty gap sound in run defense, but last week against Iowa, there were 3 or 4 times when he was influenced out of his gap a little bit. And in those situations, it led to some chunk plays. Now, when they go one gap and he just has one gap to be mindful of and can come downhill on it, then he looks like a good solid player. So Noah Harvey's still learning there. Now, people are asking, and I wrote about this in the article that's on the front of SpartanMag.com right now, about Indiana's first touchdown. It was third down and 5 at the 8-yard line. The game is still scoreless. Indiana's third possession. Remember, Indiana's first 2 possessions, the first one, Shaq Brown with an interception. The second one, they had to punt after Naquan Jones made a real good play on 3rd down and 1 against the run. So then Rocky Lombardi throws the interception, intercepted at the 50-yard line. Indiana drives down to the 13-yard line. 3rd and 5 at the 8-yard line. Handoff to Scott, the running back.
Call from
Marcus.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
Hey, Marcus, hold on a second real quick, please. I'm going to finish a thought here.
Sure.
All right, so it's 3rd down and 5 yards to go to the 8-yard line for Indiana's first touchdown, handed off to the running back, Scott, and he kind of goes in untouched. And Noah Harvey shows up at the ball carrier at the goal line. It's at the 8-yard line. Why is the middle linebacker showing up at the ball carrier at the goal line? Well, I looked at it again, and Michigan State was playing the pass all the way, 3rd down and 5 at the 8-yard line. They dropped into basically a Tampa 2 coverage, which is cover 2, and the weakness of a cover 2 is, the deep middle. So sometimes teams going back, I think Monty Kiffin invented it with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's why they call it Tampa 2. Middle linebacker will go back to like the deep middle where the safety plays. So the linebacker fills that cover 2, the deep seam. So then, back in the old days, that would really surprise people, like, what's the linebacker doing there? It's been around for about 10 years or so. Michigan State did it a couple of times. Was it Michigan? 3 or 4 times? I get the games mixed up, but they didn't do it in week 1. I think it was the Michigan game, maybe about 5 times. So today, they ran the Tampa 2 at their own 8-yard line, which is a strange time to run it. Now, that tight end, or that inside linebacker, Harvey, he didn't go to the deep middle because, the deep middle is the end zone. Instead of the deep middle, he just kind of went to the goal line and put a fence on the goal line. If Indiana had been passing the ball, that might have been a great defense. But they didn't pass it. They ran it. And Michigan State, with the inside linebacker dropping out, Michigan State only had 5 players in the box, in the tackle box, in the linebacker, in the defensive line linebacker box area. Indiana had an attached tight end for that play. So Indiana had 6 blockers against 5. And on a run play, that's not going to work. I mean, unless you've got, Mean Joe Green, maybe 3 or 4 Mean Joe Greens in there to defeat blocks. You're asking a defensive lineman to beat a block and make a tackle. Usually the guy that makes the tackle is the first unblocked player. Or if someone beats a block, I know. But that was football sometimes is like rock, paper, scissors. And Michigan State chose rock, and Indiana had paper called on that one. So you got beat in rock, paper, scissors there, and you got beat by not stopping the run first. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but if you're looking for philosophical differences between the old D'Antonio way of doing things and the new Scotty Hazelton way of doing things, a lot of times Hazelton will look to stop the pass first and react to the run. D'Antonio was always about stopping the run first, whether it was Narduzzi as the coordinator or Barnett, Tressel, or Tressel. stop the run first, react to the pass. Sometimes they'd be light in numbers out in the slot area. That's why a lot of teams had a lot of success with bubble screens or throwing to the slot against Michigan State. Michigan State wanted to stop the run up the middle, react to the outside. Michigan State, they'll change it up here and there. But 3rd and 5 at the 8-yard line, you never would have seen a running back just walk into the end zone like that in the old system. There'll be times when the new system works. I thought it worked against Milton, but it's, as Mel Tucker says, it's going to be a process. But on that play, people that are critical of run defense or Noah Harvey, just know that Noah Harvey was assigned to be deep Tampa 2 for that play. But they called run and it went into the end zone. Marcus, are you calling from Texas?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am.
What is
Calling
going
from
on?
Dallas.
From Dallas, Texas.
Not much.
Thanks for calling the show.
Just,
what's in your mind?
Thank you. The big debate on the bunker's been, talent versus coaching. I've thought it's kind of a silly argument at this point. The coaching, obviously, the situation that they stepped into was very difficult, and it seems to me that as far as the talent goes, that we don't have legitimate Big Ten talent at this point on the team. I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that and kind of hear your thoughts on if this team can be competitive with how it's built right now, and if it's a talent thing or if it's a coaching thing of all things.
Wow, that's a chicken or the egg situation. You know what this team needed was the first game of the year against Youngstown State and a second game against Akron, get to 2-0, and maybe play Arizona State again. Somehow get into the season 3-0 like D'Antonio. I think D'Antonio began his first year 3-0. And then D'Antonio went 3-5 in the Big Ten his first year. Now, I don't think this team's getting to 3-5 this year in the 8-game schedule. Doesn't look like it. But, that aside, you got to be better than 49-7 and 24-0. Back-to-back games like that. So talent versus coaching. The coaching, it's a different mindset on defense. And there was a time last week when Michigan State was a little light in the box for one of the run plays. And, I'd heard, through some sources that Michigan State was going to hang on to some of the 4-3 that they had installed from last year. But when they did not use it against Iowa, it was clear that if they didn't use it in that game, they didn't have it. So, they're all, 4-2-5, all the way, 2 linebackers. And in pregame today, they only warm up 6 linebackers. First string, a second string, and a third string. The only linebackers that were dressed today were the 2 that started, Simmons and Harvey, and then the backups, Klein and Boateng. And just Lord Boateng has not played quality time repetitions all year. He's played on special teams, but he's not gotten on the field. Then the third string linebackers were Cal Halliday and walk-on Terry O'Connor, and that's it. That's all the linebackers they're dressing. So, and Halliday was ejected for targeting on special teams today. But, is it talent or is it coaching? When they beat Michigan, man, I thought they were really well coached that day. Really well coached. Came out with some new looks. I thought that Tucker had done a great job pushing the psychological buttons all week. They were clean, very few penalties, and they were just excellent. I thought coaching had everything to do with that. I thought that the play calling was good against Michigan. The first play of almost every drive from the second quarter on was something aggressive. A deep shot or just, they were aggressive on the first play of every game. They did a great job prior to the Michigan game of looking at the film, evaluating Michigan, and believing, we can go deep on these guys, feeling they had a speed advantage. So that was good. They went into the game believing that. It's not something they discovered during the game and went to. So as good as I thought as the coaching was in week 2, as far as the coaching goes from that point forward, it's not like I've seen some, schematical things that I just flat out didn't understand. Today when they went for it on 4th down and handed to Hayward, Hayward he's got maybe the better chance of maybe breaking a tackle, although he doesn't run as powerfully as you might think with that frame, but to hand to a running back on 4th and 2 would not have been my first choice. But sometimes coaches make a play call, the offensive coordinator makes a play call, and he's not in charge of which players are on the field. Position coaches have that choice. I remember the Champs Sports Bowl in Orlando back in like 2007. Michigan State was playing, and D'Antonio called for a deep post. Or it might have been Treadwell, as offensive coordinator, called for a deep post. And Treadwell's just looking at his play sheet and what he wants to go to in certain situations, makes the play call, and it was a deep post to Blair White. That was back when nobody had ever heard of Blair White. When they called that play, they were expecting Devin Thomas to be out there, but Devin Thomas had just checked out. So sometimes a coach will make a play call, and the play goes out there, but it's not the player that he thought would be out there. I know sometimes it works out. Sometimes, there's not a big drop-off from one player to the next. But a 4th down run with Hayward, I'll have to look at that again. Is it a possibility that they checked to a run on that? Was that initially supposed to be a pass play, which would make more sense with Hayward because he's the best pass protector and also the best receiver among the running backs. I'll have to look to see if maybe there was a check on that play. But you're asking about coaching. There's different levels of coaching. There's player development, there's schemes, there's in-game adjustments, play calling, all those things. I was kind of along with a lot of the other Michigan State fans, was thinking there was a chance that the offensive line could be a plus this year. But it's been a negative. As much as it's been the last 2 years, it's been a negative. And I believe Chris Kapilovic is a good offensive line coach. Watching Colorado last year, I thought he did a real good job with a young unit last year. He's very well respected. So I think he's going to be good. And I thought there was a chance that he might be able to work some magic with some of these veteran players that Michigan State had returning on the offensive line, a lot of offensive linemen that had starting experience but had not played well collectively. Well, they have starting experience because there's not been a lot in the talent pool in recent years, and maybe there still isn't a lot in the talent pool. From one play to the next, last week SpartanMag did some decent things against Iowa. Like Tucker said, Tucker charted that Michigan State had 15 efficient run plays against Iowa. I think that means gaining 3 yards or more, and nobody on the offensive line, or no block or loop missing an assignment. And I could see that when you go back and look at it. There were some times when they ran inside zone, double team combo block, get out of the linebacker, occupy him. Safety fills, gain 3 yards. Might be an ugly 3 yards, but sometimes it's a 3 yards well earned. You need some of those to break out to pad your numbers, of course. But I thought there's some glimmers of hope there with SpartanMag at the center position, and I still do. I've not gone back to look at the offensive line again this week, but Indiana has been stopping people, except for Penn State. They've been stopping people on the ground all year. One of the most unbelievable stats I've seen all year in the Big Ten was that they held Michigan to like 15 yards net rushing last week. And today, Michigan State rushed for 60 yards, 100 yards in gains, 40 yards in losses. Tailbacks, Connor Hayward averaged 5.4 yards per carry. He had a 14-yarder. So I guess statistically, maybe Hayward was the best bet on that 4th down play. Jordan Simmons got the start at tailback, 5 carries, 3 yards a carry. Elijah Collins, last year's leader in rushing, over 900 yards rushing last year. 5 carries today, which I think is the most work he's had all year. 5 carries, 15 yards, 3 yards per carry. Not terrible. I'm sorry. That's Simmons. Elijah Collins, 3 carries. That still might be the most work he's had. Maybe he had 3 or 4 carries in a couple other games. But Elijah Collins, 3 carries, 5 yards, 1.7 per carry. And that's the way Elijah Collins has been every time he's gotten the ball this year. Sometimes he hasn't had much blocking. Other times, I've not really looked to see if he could have gotten more than he's getting. But in that initial game against Rutgers, I thought he looked a little slower for some reason. Wasn't sure why. But we'd been hearing that he wasn't doing all that great in preseason practice. He still gets chances. But the Collins you're seeing in the games this year, consistently averaging 1 yard a carry, that's the Collins that they are seeing in practice. Then Anthony Williams, who missed the first 2 games, 2 or 3 games, I guess 2 games, with some, I don't want to say off-field issues, but just had some accountability things he needed to address and get straightened out. So he didn't play the first couple of games. He's played the last 2 games a little bit. He's a guy with some explosiveness. The previous staff really liked his explosiveness. Last week he gets in the game, the first carry, inside zone. They've got a little something going over to the right. Samac and Carrick got pretty good movement on a double team. Might have been able to gain 2 yards, 3 yards, and then maybe got a chance to break a tackle. Although against Iowa, you're not going to break many tackles. But he didn't go where it was blocked. He tried to bounce outside, lost a yard. You have guys trying to earn trust at running back. Don't be bouncing outside losing a yard. When you've got movement on a double team over here, go get your 2 yards or 3 yards. Give him credit for believing in himself, trying to make a play. But part of discipline is do the right thing when you're supposed to do it. And he's a true sophomore. Jeremy Langford was the same way. I remember seeing Jeremy Langford in the green-white game and thinking that guy's never going to be a running back because he was everything was dancing. He was tap dancing, trying to do that every play like Barry Sanders. Wasn't working. They moved him to receiver, then moved him to corner, then back to receiver, then back to tailback. And by that time, like his last chance at tailback, he was a different player. He was planting a foot, getting north. And then he started seeing that speed. Ends up a couple of 1,000-yard rushing seasons, gained 100 yards, 15 straight games, whatever that was. I don't know it was a lot. And ran the fastest 40-yard time at the NBA Combine, became an NFL player. I wouldn't have thought that out of Langford. Anthony Williams has some plus ability, so you don't want to throw him out with the bathwater just because he fumbles this one and didn't run it right last week. But, hey, it's a competitive time right now. And if you don't, and you're not going to get many opportunities, don't do that and don't fumble it. But he did. Fumbled at his own 16-yard line. A couple plays later, they scored. It's 14-0. You're looking at, you guys saw that Michigan State's first 3 drives, punt, interception, fumble, punt, interception. And the interception gave him the ball at the 50. The fumble gave him the ball at the 15. And the interception was returned and gave him the ball at the 25-yard line, I think. And Michigan State's not good enough to be giving teams the ball at the 50, the 15, the 5. And Indiana is definitely too good of a team to give them a short field. Pretty good team. Tricky with their pass coverages. Stopped the run today. Stopped the run last week. And the thing about the way they stopped the run, and I mentioned this in the pre-snap read, and this is what is sneakily successful for Indiana. They're two-gapping on the defensive line. They're not getting moved off of there. And if you have 4 guys that are two-gapping effectively, and if one guy is enough that commands a double team, then you can conceivably play with a player less on defense. If there's 6 blockers, if there's 5 offensive linemen and a tight end, 6 blockers, that means there's 7 gaps on each shoulder. So 6 players, 7 gaps. If there's 6 blockers, you need 7 in the box to fill every gap if you're one gapping. That means an extra player, usually. Because if you're 5 linemen and a tight end, that's probably 3 receivers. And if you have 7 in the box, you either have to choose to go 2 safeties and 2 receivers against 3, or go 1 safety, then you can go 3 receivers against 3, but then you're weaker with only 1 safety over the top. So you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul, as Norm Park used to say. 12 pegs, you got 12 holes, and you got 11 pegs to fill. You have to choose which ones you're going to fill. Okay. But if you're two-gapping, then you can fill 6 blockers with 6 players. You don't need a 7th for every gap. That's why it's ambitious to try to two-gap. You need some rotund individuals to do it. And then you need linebackers to be able to read more than 1 gap. That's when you get into the read and react thing that some people don't like. People in my business, I don't know. Read and react used to be a bad word back in the old days. But if you're two-gapping, then you can get 6. You can play with 6 in the box. And Indiana does that. They stop the run with 6. And against 3 receivers, they'll man up with all 3. So you don't have that free release in the slot. And because they're able to stop it with 6, then they can still have 2 safeties deep. So they're manning up against 3 receivers, and they have 2 safeties deep. So it's like they're playing with 12 on the field because they're able to two-gap with 4 and do it, and the 2 linebackers, McFadden and the other guy, they're just real good at choosing the gap and getting downhill. Sneaky good. I don't know if any of those guys are NFL players, but they're getting it done. So, and then with the 2 safeties over the top, they're changing coverages all the time. Cover 2, cover 2 is with the one Lombardi interception, and they change those things up. So they're good, but they're stopping the run also. And hey, that coach Allen, he's been recruiting down in Florida, getting some 4-stars. That's a weird thing. They got guys. They got a 4-star from Florida, 4-stars from Memphis. I know he's got connections in Tampa, and that's helping them. But when they were building it, I mean, Michael Penix was a 4-star from Florida. I mean, how and why could Indiana go down to Florida and get a 4-star? They got it done. And they play a lot of guys, and they're well coached. I mean, they get to where they need to go. It's been interesting. All right, we're gonna check the live area. Go ahead and give us a call. We'll sign off here in a second. I got to get with Paul and do the VCast here in a minute. But if anyone else wants to call in and get anything off their chest, we'll keep it open for a little bit longer. But all right, Ty Garland checked in early. I'm going up to the top of the lineup here. Rob South was in. He says, I'd love to see Peyton practice with the ones and get a shot next week. I think that's going to happen. I think it's got to happen. And these coaches are only 4 games in, but in today's society, you need to get stuff done. You got to get it going soon. And they are going to be impatient as well. Mr. Boneman says, piss poor performance. It's a good way to put it. And hopefully that's as bad as my language is going to be tonight. I'm trying. Cartero says Thorne needs to start next week. Smitty Rock says Thorne actually moves like a real quarterback. He does look elusive. He is elusive. Got out of trouble a couple of times. And you know what? Indiana was sending blitzes at him. They were blitzing him like every play. They were like, okay, we're going to heat him up. We're going to speed up his decision-making process. And we're going to make it uncomfortable for him. Indiana with that lead, they didn't play soft and, let him drive. I mean, they came after him. So Thorne was able to get some real bullets flying repetitions, which will help him. Detroit Spartan says, hoping to hear from @Rick Nash tonight. Do we have a large enough sample size now? I think Detroit Spartan has been saying for a while that Rocky Lombardi was not going to be able to get it done, and today he looked right, and that might be the performance that cinches it for a while. If Peyton Thorne can come in and do the job, that's the way this game goes, and that can be it sometimes.
Call from
Manuel.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Manuel didn't sound very...
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
I'm going to trust my instincts in there. Manuel, you can try to call back again if you want to, but I'm going to trust my instincts on that one. Because last week, we had a guy call in and didn't seem like his heart was in it, and we put him on the air, and he ended up disgracing the entire country of Canada. Mr. Boneman says, another bad job done by all. Mr. Boneman saying it like it is. Maybe not all of them. I saw a couple of good defensive tackles. Jaden Reed was better. Jaden Reed had a great game against Rutgers. Hasn't done a lot since then. Today made some plays. Had a couple of plays in the return game. Two nice kick returns. One out to like the 36 and one to the 38. Called back by a legal block by Cal Halliday targeting, and the other one a legal block by Elijah Collins. Puts Michigan State back at the 10 or 11-yard line. A game like that, I'm not saying you need to be perfect to beat Indiana, but Michigan State's margin for error is so slim that you don't need to be starting at your own 11-yard line due to self-inflicted errors. Sometimes there'll be a penalty because the other team is so fast that you've got to hold to give yourself a chance, but that's not the case on those. That was just penalties you cannot have on special teams. Last week against Iowa, Michigan State had trouble with their gunners. Barnett once, Xavier Henderson maybe. I can't remember who the other one was. Today the gunners were Barnett and Davion Williams. Cartero 917 says Thorne has an actual pocket presence. He's elusive. I'm not, pocket presence is one way to say it. He's got to improve his ability to read, which I think can come in time. And that's a big part of quarterbacking. You never know. All right, Detroit Spartan says it was an awful interception. Talking about the deep one, the first one. Like I said, it was man-to-man over here, safety's over here. You should be able to throw a fly on that. I'll have to look at it again. Maybe he left it too far inside the numbers. But it was strange that it wasn't the targeted corner that made the interception. It was the other corner. And how he had time to come back to it. Too much loft on it. I'll have to look at it again. It was a switch release, so maybe the outside receiver was supposed to take it more to the inside and get his defender out of there. I'm not sure, but it was strange. Detroit Spartans, former quarterback. I'll take his word on that one. Smitty Rock says, yep, Thorne can throw on the run. Great talent, just needs experience. That's what you're hoping for. Smitty Rock says, it looked like Rocky punted it. Yeah, it was in the air for a long time, wasn't it? Too far inside, Spartan says. Detroit Spartan says. Yeah, if you're throwing that that deep fade along the sidelines, Detroit Spartan knows this. Coaches, I think Bill Walsh came up with a red line. In some practice fields, you'll see a red line inside the numbers on a practice field. Like, say, here's the 40-yard line. See if I can do this. This is like trying to... You never want to be in my neighborhood. I'm backing out of a driveway. There we go. See the 40-yard line and the 30? Right where the pen is where the red line is on a practice field, just inside the numbers. I can't do it. And the corner and the wide receiver are battling to control that red line. And a quarterback wants to throw it from the red line toward the sideline in that area. And if the corner can keep the receiver out of that or force the red line in, it's advantageous for the corner. If the wide receiver can get on top and work it so that the quarterback's got a cushion from the red line in. But if you leave it outside the numbers, maybe that's what happened on that interception. I'd have to look at it again. Cartero 917 says, on that one throw to Reed where Thorne ran around and made a few guys miss, that was an incredible throw. That was. Scramble rules, thrown back to his high school teammate. That was, that had some it factor to it, didn't it? Heinfree says, don't like the S, stick with the brand. I understand that, and I agree. The Spartan helmet is one of the great logos in college football, in my opinion. Spartan S, Block S for Perlis today was good once. Maybe when they've got the 40th anniversary of the Rose Bowl or something, do it again. But until then, it looked good once, but I don't need it any more than once every couple of years. If that. What I liked was the blank helmet on one side. It was nice to see that, right? The Block S is whatever, but the blank part is what really set Michigan State apart back in those days for Michigan State fans. Nationally, people are probably like, what's going on with that helmet? But, it was an homage a little bit to the old Perlis Steelers days. MM Drippy says, people saying how they don't like Tucker after every loss really makes me mad. Understand that. Jim Baird says, the first 3 scoring drives totaling 17 points, the 3 drives totaled 88 yards. Indiana only had 1 scoring drive that started on their side of the 50-yard line. Now, there's some analysis in a hurry from Jim Baird. Thanks, Jim. Mr. Bowman says, don't like the helmet. Cartero 917 says, 3 good run, 3 goods, run defense. Peyton, the 3 goods are run defense, Peyton Thorne, Shakur Brown. The 3 bads are pass defense, Rocky Lombardi, and play calling. All right? MM Drippy says, 1 positive is Indiana averages 37 yards a game, and we held them to 24. Let's go! MM Drippy, all fired up. He's ready for Maryland. I hope there's a game, man. Maryland? I just hope there's a game. And I agree with what Tucker says. They just need to play. We want to see Peyton Thorne play again. See if there's progress. See if the offensive line's ever going to make progress. See if a running back ever comes to the forefront. See if the run defense can build off this a little bit. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. That was a good hour. Got some calls in. I got to get with Konendijk, do the VCast. And I got to write a .comp article probably tonight for SpartanMag.com. Let me zip through this really quick, see if there's anything else. All right, Rob South says 3 good. Shaq Brown, run defense, and Angelo Gross. Angelo Gross, true freshman, getting a start at the nickel position. Jim Baird, he says, it's not just about Lombardi. Quarterback recruiting has been subpar for years. Can't argue with that right now. Marcus Nevada says, do you think that Michigan State currently has average Big Ten talent or better? Not better. It's average to worse. It's I'd say bottom third of the Big Ten right now. Detroit Spartan says, it's about Lombardi. He is what he's always been. And Peyton Theo missed some valuable development reps because of the Lombardi experiment, failed experiment. Detroit Spartan. I respect that opinion, but the coaches are going to put who they think is the best player out there. And in practice, I wasn't there, but in practice, it was Lombardi. So as coaches, I don't fault them. I wouldn't expect them to put a guy in the field that they perceive to be inferior at the time. Now, on the sample size we saw out of Thorne today, he looks better with a better upside. So did Thorne just not display that in practice? I'm not sure. Some guys are just gamers. Some people are not. I'll go through this here. Jay Johnson's third and short calls always end up 4th and 5, Austin Courier says. Jim Baird says, Lombardi is not a D1 quarterback, no doubt, but go back and take a look at the quarterbacks that MSU brought in over the last 4 years. How many Power 5 offers did they have? Very few. Yeah, quarterback recruiting, not been strong. They thought they had Deion Mathis for a while. He hasn't turned out to be good, but he's had some other problems off the field. Yeah. D. Brody says Rocky was a wrestler, put him at fullback or tight end or on defense. Cartero 917 says our game next week could be canceled, which would be great for Thorne to get him more reps in practice. Well, that's one way to look at it. But I just kind of like to see football every week. But then you go out and play Maryland and you lose 30-10. George Z says it's a dumpster fire. Detroit Spartan says then he was throwing the ball into the dirt against Iowa when he wasn't throwing interceptions. It's a good point. That's when that was. I didn't know if the injury, he's hobbled last week. I didn't know if that had if that had something to do with it or not. But there was that third down play to the left. I think it was to the field side, and just short-hopped it, which is more consistent with what we saw from Lombardi really in previous years. And I was like, ooh, if that keeps happening, that's the old Lombardi. That can't work. Or maybe he was hurt. I don't know. But then the other problems arose last week and again this week. Jim Baird says, Lewerke was the last to have a decent list of offers from other Power 5 schools, the last quarterback, he's saying. Since then, Messiah DeWeaver, Rocky Lombardi, Theo Day, Peyton Thorne, Noah Kim. Now, DeWeaver, he had the Michigan offer and decommitted. I think DeWeaver had some other offers. And, what became of him. George Z says Lewerke was garbage too. Now, that's not nice. Now, Lewerke was really good as a sophomore, injured a little bit as a junior, hot and cold last year. But remember, he didn't have a run game the last 2 years either. It helps if you have a run game. Cartero says Lewerke was 15 times better than Lombardi. That's a good way to look at it. Lewerke had his detractors. D'Antonio had his detractors, but if you had D'Antonio and Lewerke right now, I don't know if you win that game. Probably not either game, but you wouldn't lose by as much, but not sure what the future would hold. It's a tough business, this college football stuff. It's a tough racket. Eric says, State will get better, guys. Just going to take a couple years. How about Eric? Eric's avatar looks like Mackinac Island. Appreciate that. He's very positive. And I can see why he's positive because he's a shoreline guy. He's laid back. George Z says, Lewerke couldn't hit a barn with a semi-truck. George is not so laid back. Dominique Orino says, Brian regressed a bit, but was a legit Big Ten level starting quarterback. I agree with that. Mr. Bowman says, I like Lewerke. Detroit Spartan says, if you didn't know why Coach D didn't play Rocky over an injured Lewerke, you do now. Detroit Spartan just won't let up on the on the Lombardi thing. We get it, and now we see what you're talking about. I thought he was trending upward after the first two games. Cartero 917 says Lewerke was solid before the injury. So now we're in a Lewerke. What's the old saying? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Lewerke's absence is making the heart grow fonder of him. And Lewerke was watching that Michigan game, and he tweeted, and he was like, oh, now they're going to call defensive holding, because every time he played against Michigan, he thought that they were holding all the time. Lewerke was probably also saying, man, now they're going to throw deep, now that I'm not there anymore. Jim Baird says Lewerke had moments, but was inconsistent. Either way, his offer list was much better than any quarterback recruit since. The program is a long way from the days of Smoker, Stanton, Cousins, or Cook. Now, it's a good point, but you look at Cook's offers. Cook didn't have many offers. Stanton was a highly recruited guy that was grew up a Michigan State guy. Smoker was a big-time recruit, no question about it. He was a big-timer. Saban began that recruitment, put a lot of time into it, then he moved on. He got the commitment, then he moved on, and Morris Watts helped keep him. Kirk Cousins was a two-star recruit. His only offer was Western Michigan. So those were good quarterbacks, but they weren't necessarily recruiting victories. So earlier, Jim, you were talking about quarterbacks in regard to how many scholarship offers they had. So now, with that statement, that doesn't strengthen your earlier point, because Cook and Cousins, Michigan State's two winningest quarterbacks since the 60s, neither one had a lot of offers. Now, Cook committed like early summer, so if his recruitment had lasted longer, maybe he would have gotten more offers. But Narduzzi was the one that kind of discovered him. A lot of discussion here at the beginning of the chat board about Lewerke and Lombardi and quarterbacks. Okay, I can respect that. I'm going to scan through to see if anything else changed. Cartero 917 says Jordan Simmons, I also think, can be something when he gets a line. I agree. Looked pretty good on that one screen pass. Gained 15 or so from Peyton Thorne. Detroit Spartan says, love Jordan Simmons long term. Cartero 917 says, I do wish we saw more of Julian Barnett today. I'm hearing that Barnett is just having trouble grasping things. And when you're signaling in a defense, you need everybody to be on the same page. And if one guy isn't getting it, can you put him on the field? I know he runs better than most of the other guys, but, they went with Dominic Long today. He runs pretty well, too. So the difference between Barnett and Long, Barnett might be more fluid, better all-around athlete, but if Long knows what to do, I can see why that's why you would go with him. Gordon Tenona says, we were sold the false bill of goods. I have no confidence in the current coaching staff going forward. So Gordon has spoken. Doors Fan 91 says, Dobbs, Barnett, Burgorst, no factor in the program. You can wait on, but it'd be good if Barnett had a better grasp right now. Got to remember, Barnett moved to defense and he had Zoom all spring and summer and August. Got on the field for a couple of days and then a few more. He could have used a full spring practice, having changed positions, and an entire preseason camp. We didn't know that at the time, though. Burgorst, would have expected more playing time out of him. Jim Baird says, I like the Collins from last year, but he has not been productive this year. I will say that. It seems like every time he gets the ball in his hands, he's met in the backfield. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at every single carry to see what was there for him. I know in the Rutgers game he had no room. Since then, I've not really looked at it from his side of things. So maybe he's not getting blocking. That's probably the case on a lot of it. But the point is, most of the tailbacks are averaging about 3 yards per carry in most of the games, which is not good, but Collins is the one guy that's averaging like 1 yard a carry. And he's not getting much time, so that tells you in practice it's not too pretty either. And that's one of the biggest disappointments of the season. Jim Baird, I keep reading Jim Baird's posts because they're very thoughtful, and he's obviously an astute Michigan State fan, and he knows the history, and I may not agree with him, but that doesn't mean that I'm right and he's wrong. Jim Baird says, Tucker deserves at least a couple years to try to clean house where he needs to and bring in his guys. That's absolutely correct, and it's sad that we have to say that. You know, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and back then you had a 5-year plan, period. You got your 5 years. Nowadays, I mean, you saw, was it Guy Morris at Arkansas lasted a year and a quarter? Willie Taggart, Florida State, a year and a quarter. Yeah, you need, absolutely. You're paying him all that money. He's got some potential to do a lot of things. He's got other coaches, players. You'd like the operation to be more stapled together and buttoned down, of course, right? But one thing that Michigan State did well today was they didn't jump off sides on defense. They played good run defense and didn't jump off sides. And you might say, jump off sides, that's elementary. Why did they get a gold star for that? Well, maybe not a gold star, but maybe a silver star and a helmet sticker. Well, maybe not a helmet sticker. The reason I say that is because Indiana drew Michigan offside like 7 or 8 times last week. Jim Baird said, switching gears, was it ever confirmed why so many defensive backs were out today? I can confirm that it was not COVID. They're dinged up. Let's see here. Yeah. And Trey Person and Christian Jackson were on the sideline today. So it was not COVID with them. And Gervin was banged up. And that's the thing, you know, Christian Jackson was banged up last week. So Michigan State has so much work to do, and the coaches are trying to coach them up and get them corrected. And the one way to get them corrected is live reps in practice, physical live reps. And when you're doing that kind of teaching in practice on Tuesday and Wednesday, you run the risk of guys not making it to Saturday. That's where Michigan State is right now. That's one of the dilemmas. We got to get these guys coached up, but you might get guys banged up every week. And Michigan State, you know, Tucker's got the luxury. He has no hot seat now. There is no like worrying about honeymoon being over. He can just coach, practice. And if guys get dinged up before practice, oh well, we'll go with who we have on Saturday. But in the meantime, we're taking full advantage of Tuesdays and Wednesdays with some physicality, getting things corrected, get it on film, and playing it. And not having to worry about having to win each week. You're trying to win each week, but not to the point of being worried about trying to save your team for Saturday and not getting corrections done. Mr. Bowman says, I give Tucker 3 or 4 years to turn this around, and if he does do like he did to Colorado, and leaves, he didn't finish the statement. Big Will says, the offense is so predictable, I don't expect them to be great or anything, especially with the current circumstances. However, they should be better than this. Well, it's hard to be worse than 0 points, isn't it, my man? It's hard to be worse than not penetrating the 38-yard line. And Indiana's defense is good, but they're not Ohio State. In this day and age, you should be able to clip off some plays, right? I think Michigan State had 9 first downs. Like I said in the first paragraph of my story on SpartanMag.com right now, my opening line is, it's gotten to the point where a first down is like a victory for Michigan State. Didn't it feel like that? I mean, you complete a pass, it's like, yeah, first down. Indiana's dropping back, bam, bam, 300. He probably could have thrown for 400 if they needed to. Doors Fan 91 says, Burghorst was a defensive end coming in. That's a good point. He was a defensive end coming in. Moved him to tight end last year when they were getting injuries at tight end. Now at defensive end, there's a few. Defensive end is not a strength either. You don't have pass rushers, but there's more serviceable bodies at defensive end than there is at tight end, so you keep him at tight end. But you're right. That's a good point. Came in as a defensive end. He's essentially out of position and doing what he can. Did not come in. He's got a frame as a tight end, but I'm not sure pass receiving was ever his recruitable strong suit. And now a defensive end, the Piotrowski kid did a couple things well today. And then Fletcher's looking all right. Camper, I thought against Iowa was pretty good, setting the edge at the point of attack. He's not a guy that's going to get off and make plays, but he was not getting, steamrolled, which is the first thing you have to do. Make sure you don't get steamrolled. Drew Beasley's functional. No plus players at defensive end. But I'm wondering in the future, they travel. Avery Dunn, he was out there. He traveled before, and he was out there pregame warm-up today. A thinner guy, but an athletic guy that's got a chance to be an edge rusher. So he's a defensive end in the future. He's got to get lighter or heavier in the pants so that he doesn't get swept off at the point of attack. I'm thinking about other defensive ends that are around. Zach Slade, we've not seen him at all. Jacob Slade's brother was injured last year. I've not seen him at all. So is it possible Burgos could move back to defensive end? It's possible, but it's not like they've got a bunch of tight ends coming in right now. So Detroit Spartan says Peyton threw a couple of strikes today as well. He did. He had a nice square in to Tyler Hunt when it was 2nd down and 21 coming out of their own territory. And he had that slant to Jaden Reed, threw it high, knowing Jaden Reed would go up and get it. That was against the zone blitz. And Indiana did some tricky things on 3rd downs with some zone blitz. Bringing pressure. You're seeing linebackers coming. You think you got to heat up because you see these rushers coming, but in actuality, it's only 4 players. So it's a zone pressure, not a zone blitz. It's a blown zone blitz. Most coaches think if it's 5 rushing or more. If it's 4 coming, then it's just a pressure. It's a zone pressure. But anyway, you think, here's 2 linebackers coming, and you're like, I got to go fast. But you're looking back there, and there's 7 guys in coverage, and you got to get rid of it or you're sacked already. But you think you have to hurry up, but it's only a 4-man rush. It looks like more because you have people come from different directions, but there's D linemen dropping back. And then they do a zone blitz with a stunt. That's how they got their first sack. So O-line's got a lot of picking up to do. And I noticed they gave that sack in the first half. Came out, and they were doing some reps after halftime, came back out. You have that little 5-minute warm-up before the second half starts. Kapilovic was getting Samac, Duplain, Carrick together, and they were running stunts to try to pass that off and pick it up. Everything's a work in progress. All right, I think we're about done. Let me see if we got something else. Smoky Gamers says Barnett got in last week for a few plays and got burnt every snap he was in. He has no clue what he's doing, so he plays super slow. He was my favorite player coming into this year. Smoky Gamers, I did not notice that, but that's what I hear. Smoky Gamers, let's see. Now we're talking about Dobbs. I think we're going to wrap it up. Anyway, Derek Hurst says, just imagine how much would be solved if we could run the ball. Let's all sit together for a moment and just imagine that. If Michigan State could run the ball. Remember those days when Michigan State would run for like 175? Remember those days? Remember those days? 175 yards. 175 actual yards. Not 175 cubits. We're not talking about cubits. We're talking about yards. If they could run the ball and not turn it over, how much easier would Lombardi's job have been? All right, that's enough of that. I keep saying we're almost done. Blong John says Lombardi is on an airport people mover. Thorne is on an escalator. How about Blong John's metaphors? Troy Spartan says exactly. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but he says exactly. Tom Coyle says, appreciate your work, Jim. Keep that Purdue shirt inside out. Go green. Tom Coyle remembers one of my old stories about Perlis. I'd tell that story now, but we don't have time. Wisconsin is 21-0. Wisconsin's up 21-0. Let me look this up. People, I love you people. I love my job. I love doing this. I like staying up all night. I don't get caffeinated like I used to. And I'm not as good of a person anymore. It's 27-0 Wisconsin. I was a better person back when I was addicted to caffeine. I gave it up for other reasons. I'm actually kidding. I'm more stable now in a lot of ways. But I loved staying up on 2 or 3 pots of coffee, stay up till about dawn, and just work college football, and just work and write stuff, and wake up the next morning and not remember what I wrote, and read it and see errors and be like, man, I got a typo there. But read it and like, okay, it's cool to write about college football because that's what I